Ladies and gentlemen, I have critical news to report. Right now, there is an effort, a conspiracy to get Hillary Clinton into the White House, overturning the will of the American people who have chosen Donald J. Trump as president. This is going to be one of those videos that if you've never shared a video, you have to absolutely share this video, get this information out there. I'm going to do a series of videos from here on out regarding this topic, but I first want to get this primary video out there. I want to give you a broad overview of what I am talking about. This conspiracy to get Hillary Clinton as the next president of the United States, overturning the election of Donald J. Trump. First of all, we have to understand that the Electoral College is a fundamentally flawed system. What we voted for on November 8th is actually not. It is not official. It only becomes official when the electors of the Electoral College submit their official votes. That means, in theory and in principle, that somebody could go rogue and not vote in accordance with the will of the people in their states. The last time this so-called faithless elector went rogue was recently in 2004. Now back then, of course, George W. Bush was elected. It didn't matter. He had a very healthy lead over John Kerry. So that rogue vote, when he went against the people of Minnesota, it didn't matter. Okay? However, in this year's election, you got to think. Now, it's never occurred where a faithless elector has changed the course of the election. But the 2016 election is an election season unlike any other. So this could be the year of firsts. Now, there is a Texas GOP elector that is on record stating that he is a strong critic, a strong opponent of Donald Trump. And he has said publicly that he is considering voting against the will of the people and voting for Hillary Clinton. Based on what I see right now with the vote tally, with Texas having over 30 electoral votes, that will drop Donald Trump out of the necessary 270 to win. And then that wouldn't necessarily bring Hillary Clinton up to 270. However, what it could do is inspire other people. This is the only one that we know on record, but there could be others. There could be other voters, electors of the Electoral College that are going to go rogue. So this could set an unusual precedent in a very unusual election season. Now, interestingly, and we're going to go back into U.S. history, deep into U.S. history. What you have to know is that the Electoral College system was heavily supported by Alexander Hamilton. I repeat, the Electoral College was heavily supported by Alexander Hamilton. Hamilton is a very interesting figure in U.S. history. Now, for all of you conspiracy theorists out there, all of you that have trouble trusting the federal government, you're going to want to hear this. Hamilton was instrumental. He created the first central bank in the United States. And here's the component, a unique component of this national bank of the United States. The federal government held a minority stake, but the board of directors were comprised of, get this, private citizens. Now, we've all heard that conspiracy theory that the Federal Reserve is not a component of the federal government, but it is run as a private corporation. Now, whether you believe that conspiracy theory or not doesn't matter, because the broader point here, the underlying point, is that the national bank that Alexander Hamilton created had that component already built in, that the National Bank of the United States is run by a private corporation, a group of private elite citizens, the aristocracy. So that whole concept of the Federal Reserve being run as a private corporation, it's not as crazy as it sounds, because that is how Alexander Hamilton designed the National Bank of the United States. Also, you have to note that this shared ownership, the minority stake of the federal government and the control, the board of directors being run by private citizens, that was a checks and balances system within the central bank. Again, the point here is that Alexander Hamilton created the notion of a central bank and inspired other countries to create central banks of their own. He is a globalist banker. That's what we would call Alexander Hamilton today. He would be considered a globalist banker. He created that whole idea of a central bank for the United States. And this central bank had a checks and balances component. The government and the private citizens were acting as checks and balances onto each other. Now, the Electoral College is also a checks and balances system. It essentially allows the federal government to check the people, the will of the American people. You have to understand that Hamilton, in his support of the Electoral College, said that it was desirable to understand the sense of the people, but the ultimate decision should be made by educated men who possessed essentially superior intellect. You have to understand that at that time, during Alexander Hamilton's life, you have to understand that the aristocratic elites were comprised of college-educated men. You couldn't go to college unless you were part of that elitist aristocracy. And Hamilton very much shared that aristocratic elitist attitude. That's why he supported the Electoral College. He said that this was a perfect system. If it wasn't perfect, it was a most excellent system. It was designed to gauge the sentiment of the people, but that ultimately the decision would be made by the aristocratic elites. Interestingly, the American talent shows that have risen up, you know, the American Idol, The Voice, America's Got Talent, they started off initially as a pure talent show, and the voting public, the American voting public, the general public, voted who would go next onto the elimination rounds, or within the elimination rounds. They would determine, they would call in and make their vote which one of their favorite talents, superstars, would make it to the next round. Now, over the last recent couple of years, we saw a change in these talent shows. We saw, and I think American Idol actually came up with the idea that there were some votes that were considered very strange by the American public. That Sanjaya, if you guys recall, he was always voted to go ahead by the American public. So they instituted, American Idol instituted this concept of basically very much like the Electoral College, where they could hear the sentiment of the American public, but if the American public made what they determined to be a bad decision, they have the right, the judges have the right to overturn that decision. We see this same concept being deployed by other talent shows in recent years. And you notice that especially in shows like American Idol, when the judges deploy that judges save, they will make comments such as, America got this wrong, and we need to correct it. That is an elitist attitude. that has been perpetuated and shoved down the throats of the American public. They have indoctrinated the American public because guess what? The American public today, broadly speaking, generally speaking, does not give a crap about history, does not give a crap about anything outside of what's going on through their iPhone, what's going on TV. They do not care about anything. And this is why we need to have a fair and balanced media. But unfortunately, the media is controlled by an aristocratic elitist few that are shoving this indoctrination. And one of those ideologies that they are shoving down your throats is the idea of the Electoral College, that there needs to be a superior intellect that corrects the misgivings of the American public. Because I'm talking to you directly, the viewer, you are not trustworthy according to the aristocratic elitists. If you make a bad decision, guess what? The aristocratic elites have to come down and correct that decision. Again, those talent shows always say that America got it wrong. What they're also trying to say here with this year's election is that America got it wrong, and we're going to have Hillary Clinton as president. You'll also note when you're talking about the public sphere, it's very interesting that Alexander Hamilton, who we can now regard as an elitist based on what we know about his life, has now been publicly celebrated as a common man hero by the Broadway musical Hamilton. What gives? I mean, don't you guys think it's so interesting, so peculiar that Alexander Hamilton, of all the people in American history, is now being chosen to be celebrated as this common man hero, which he was not. He despised the common man hero, if I may speak frankly. Because if he viewed the common man with dignity and with integrity, why would he support the Electoral College, which acts as a checks and balances against the American public? That is the psyop that is being generated by the liberal mainstream media. When I consider all these events, there are too many coincidences. I personally believe that the aristocratic elites of this country desperately strategized to have Hillary Clinton as president, because that would also coincide with the 100th anniversary of the women's suffrage movement. It would also coincide with the first woman being placed on our national currency. So clearly, when the American public unexpectedly voted for Donald J. Trump, that completely destroyed the symmetry, the perfect symmetry that the aristocratic elites have created for the year 2016. I, again, do not believe that this is a coincidence. And I do not believe that we can sit still and bask in the glory of Donald Trump's victory until December 19th, when the electors of the Electoral College make the official vote. We still have a long time here. I don't think that anybody can relax. And it's very important. This is the reason why I said you've got to share this video. If you've never shared a video, you've got to share this video. You've got to share this information to the conservative base. We cannot relax, because if we just sit still and then let the Electoral College make the official decision, we could have rogue voters change absolutely everything. And guess what? We have been conditioned to accept it. The majority of the American public, the general public, has been conditioned to accept this superior correction, because they've been witnessing this type of overhanded correction through our media networks. Again, every talent show now has the judge's ability to save and to correct America's mistake. This is the Electoral College mentality that has been shoved down our throats for our entire history. And this history, this legacy was created by Alexander Hamilton and aristocratic elites that supported him. So you have to very much understand that this is absolutely critical. You've got to share this. The only way I believe that we can stop this is to get this information out there, get this corruption, get this fraud, get this conspiracy out in the open, because that is the last thing that the elites want, is to have their fraud, their conspiracy exposed to the general public, exposed to the truth of the light. Remember that the Bible says that evil always stays in the darkness. But if you bring the evil to the blinding light of truth, then everybody will know the truth, and the truth shall set you free.